regardless of the future. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we have two developing giants. We have China and India, who are going to have vast power needs, who are using a fraction of what we use, and who have, I would have thought, a human right to not have to burn cow dung to keep warm.
Yep. Okay, there was a sting in the tail of your question there, but well, firstly, to address the general issue, yes, we clearly have to. I think, well, the reality is any sort of equity concerns imply that it's hardly going to be justified for the West to say that China and India can't develop, and in any case, it's just going to happen. But there's quite a few things in that. I mean, there are a whole variety of ways of decarbonising the economy, and the truth is that China particularly, and India steadily, I think are making some pretty serious efforts to think about this, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to find them leading the rest of us within a decade or so. And
still meeting their power needs.
And certainly working towards trying to do that. Now, that has every potential, even on today's understanding of possibilities, to hugely reduce our outputs, but probably not to reduce it enough to stop below 2 degrees C, because that's quite a challenge. Going beyond that, what are the actual energy options that might enable us to do that? I mean, personally, I think that that it's very hard at the moment to get an open and rational debate about all of the alternatives, and in fact to get independent, reliable assessments of what the costs and benefits of them all might be. Quite honestly, my strongest feeling here is that it's really important that we move into an atmosphere where we can have that sort of discussion. Here in Australia, we have genuinely got immense possibilities from things like solar and geothermal and so on, and they should at least be part of the mix that we're thinking about. Whether nuclear is another one, I think that has to be a huge discussion in society, but it would be helpful if we could have it in reasonably sober terms, which are supported by data rather than emotional ones.
Sure, and in Central Australia and the Northern Territory, which has got some of the largest uranium deposits in the world, it's an important debate for us to have, I think, and I'd just be interested in knowing your thoughts about how we can move forward with that debate in a non-emotional way.
Yeah.
Have the parameters changed about nuclear power, or are we still living in the post-Chernobyl world?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, this is just an area I'm not terribly expert in, but my own personal view on this is I think the parameters have changed. Whether they've changed enough is a matter for public debate. But it is interesting that in places like Norway, there seems to be sufficient trust and, if you like, non-hype between the public and the government that it's possible to have a real debate about this and come to a certain conclusion, which in their case is to have some nuclear power and to have some disposal. Now, whether that's right or not for Australia, the issue is that I think we don't at the moment have an atmosphere in which that sort of debate can take place without getting derailed by other sorts of concerns. And so I think it would be very helpful to have leadership over what would probably take a decade or so of trust building to be able to come to the point where you could do that.
You've just written a book about the desert and how the desert can teach the world something about how to deal with climate change. What are you going to say in that book?
Well, I think understanding the way the desert operates and how we could live better here has a lot to do with understanding how to deal with unpredictable futures. It has to do with understanding handling things like mobility, people moving around a lot. It has to do with understanding how to interact with a distant urbanised population. And those are all trends which are happening around the world and which are likely to be exacerbated not only by climate change but also by other social trends that are happening. So I think exploring the ways in which our settlements change to deal with those issues, the way our small businesses might network to deal with those sorts of things, the way some of our services might be provided to handle the mobility of people better, and actually just a whole sort of attitude and governance process which enables one to try and deal with uncertain futures but still have a degree of sort of public support and consensus about how to move forwards.
So in other words,
are all
we live with uncertainty in the desert. We don't know when it's going to rain, we don't know when the river's going to flow, we don't know
someone's
how
going to move.
Be.
Yeah, when people are going to move, that's right. We really do live with, and I think live with uncertainty, and we deal with it, better or worse, but we're always trying to deal with it better. And the lessons that come from that have actually got much wider applicability than we realise in our day-to-day lives.